Hello, welcome in or welcome back to my channel. My name is Deb from DG Reads, and it is time for another arc attack. If you are not familiar with my Arc Attack series, this is actually episode 21, which is a little bit wild. But basically, this series is just my excuse to get to some highly anticipated advanced reader copies that I've received gifted from publishers and authors and bring you some thoughts on them. I try to get to them before they're out or shortly thereafter. I'm not always perfect at that, as you will soon see. But the general idea is to get to some books I'm really excited for, share thoughts, let you know if it's something you might be interested in, if it's something maybe to avoid, and just to give you a general idea of some books that I'm excited about. So we are starting off this one with a book that I'm definitely running behind on. So the book that I'm starting with is The Wedding Vow by Dandy Smith. This is an advance copy I received from Kensington, and in my defense, I didn't get it super far in advance, and it did only just come out in May, and I am currently filming this in May, so I'm not that behind, but I'm definitely behind. This one is already on shelf. Actually, I'm now seeing that the front cover says April 28th, even though the spine says May, so maybe it has been a full month. I don't know. In any case, I am enjoying my book so far. This one is following a woman named Verity, and she is heading home from a work trip and is trying to reach her husband Lyndon because the train has gone off schedule a little bit, and she is anticipating her husband picking her up but isn't sure if he's aware that the schedule has changed, but he's not answering the phone. This seems a little bit odd since he was supposed to be picking her up. She finally reaches out to a neighbor, asks a neighbor to go check in on him, maybe his phone's just not working, and when she gets home taking a cab, she discovers her neighbor running out of the house screaming, and her husband is dead inside. He has been murdered and no one has figured out what has happened. We wind up taking a time jump a year into the future when Verity and her cousin are just finally feeling ready to go in and clean out some of his stuff, clean out the house. She hasn't used their bedroom since this happened, and in the process of cleaning out that bedroom, she finds that her husband had been having an affair. And the book is written in two POVs. We get the wife, and that of course is Verity, but also chapters from the other woman. And we don't know who that other woman is. And I think the author is doing a lot of really clever things to give us hints. Like, we know the other woman lived in a certain type of house, and then you meet a character who lives in that type of house. But then another character has the same relationship with the mother that the other woman has. And we're getting all these red herrings and all of these things that are going on. And we are seeing flashbacks to the relationship this other woman had with Lyndon and how he talked to her about his wife. We are seeing flashbacks from the wife POV about their relationship and how solid of a marriage it seemed like it was. And I think it's just really well done in terms of the pacing. It's kept me really gripped and entertained, and I'm super excited to continue on with it. So we are starting off this particular arc attack very strong, and I'm looking forward to continuing. I am back. I am kicking myself that I did not read The Wedding Vow any sooner because I had a fantastic time with this, and it might be a 5-star thriller. I'm kind of thinking. I really think the author did such a good job of throwing twists and turns into the story, misleading you, throwing in hints that wind up paying off, others that didn't, so you just are never sure. And it has kind of that final end of book twist to it, but in a way that I really appreciated here. It wasn't just to make your jaw drop, it was actually payoff of things that have been happening from the very beginning of the book, and I really appreciate that. It kept me wondering the whole time, theorizing the whole time. I did have a few kind of minor guesses that turned out accurate, but overall, it definitely threw surprises at me, which I really appreciated. Our main character is really interesting to follow, and we are in her head, and this I'm speaking to the wife POV. And the wife POV, I really do like our character Verity and could feel for her in some of the things she finds out about her husband, and he was definitely a despicable man. The more and more we learn about it, the fact that he kind of turns his back on her when she starts to become successful and to kind of out-earn him when it comes to jobs and those types of things definitely have me siding with her as things went through here, even as there were some twists and turns to the story. So like I said, this was a good time. It kept me hooked, and this is, I think, my second book by this author, and this one wasn't quite as dark as the previous one was. That one had a little bit more triggering material in it. This one certainly does as well, but not quite as dark. So this was a win. Let's see if we can continue the trend. I am also now just past the halfway point in my next arc, which is Marion by Leah Rowan. This is an upcoming release. It is coming out on June 2nd, and I have a gifted audiobook from Macmillan Audio. This one is Psycho, the movie Psycho, but reimagined, where the woman who is murdered in her shower actually winds up turning the tables on the attacker and murders him instead, or kills him instead, I suppose. We are following this woman, and she's doing an errand for work, and it involves carrying a sizable sum of cash and trying to deposit it to her boss's account. The bank says no, we don't allow that here. She winds up borrowing this money, intentionally taking this money to try to help out her sister. She winds up on the road, but a bus breakdown puts her at the hotel where she meets the man who in the movie would be killing her. And in this case, we are following from her POV as things move along. I'm definitely liking the kind of way the author is twisting the original story and paying homage to that original story and some of the plot points from that. I don't know that I've ever seen the full movie all the way through. I've certainly heard allusions to it. I've certainly seen clips of it. I know the shower scene, and I know some of the twists and turns when it comes to the killer's mother and those types of things. So it really is interesting reading this from a very different POV, from a female empowerment potentially type of POV. The fact that she's trying to help her sister being in a very difficult relationship and her needing out of that, but needing support to get out of that, I can appreciate that as well. I'm feeling like things are going to get even more crazy in the second half, and I am looking forward to that as well. So I'm going to keep reading. I'm going to be back, and I'll let you know. Good morning, architect friends. I have a couple of updates for you. I spent last night doing some audiobooking and winding up the yarn for my current crochet project, so I did make some really good progress. First off, I did finish Marion, and overall I like this one. I wouldn't say I was obsessed loving it. I think it winds up like a 3.54 for me, more so than a 5. But as I got further into the book, I did get more invested. I don't think I did a good job synopsizing this at the beginning, because really we're following two POVs in here, and the main character, the woman from the shower, is definitely one of those, but we also are getting an investigator's POV, another woman who is investigating things surrounding this hotel. So we also get that. And the alternating POVs early in the book, I think, confused me a little bit. We also have a main character who identifies sometimes as Marion. Marion being like her inner self type of a thing, I think is how I would phrase that. That threw me off a little bit too. I think it just took me a while to really get connected into everything that was going on in here. But I really enjoyed the female friendship and sisterhood aspects of some of this. The characters are doing bad things, but in a way where you kind of want to root for them anyway. And I liked in the end how things wound up resolving. We learn pretty early in the book that our narrator, the woman in the shower part of the narrator anyway, is not 100% upfront with the reader. She is someone who hears voices in her head, but in kind of an intentional type of way. She hears her mother, who she lost years ago, encouraging her on the side of supporting her sister who is in this abusive relationship. And I think she clues us in fairly early that she's not 100% reliable to us, and we get reveals about that later in the book, which I did appreciate, and that they didn't completely come out of the blue in that way. So like I said, overall, if you like a good female rage story, if you like a twist on a classic, I think this one did that well, and I had a good time reading it. And then I am already halfway into my next book. My next book I am definitely behind on, so much so that Tor has sent me the finished copy from Mortedant's Peril by R.J. Barker. I have an art copy of this. I'm listening to it largely because I have the Macmillan Audio ALC as well, but this one came out May 19th, although Goodreads keeps telling me June 2nd, so I'm wondering if in some places maybe it's coming out in June. But Amazon, I double checked there because usually they're the most on the ball, even though they're not my go-to book buying place, because they update things for when things are on sale so they can actually sell them, and there it does say it is already out. So I think this did come out on May 19th. This is the start of a new trilogy. This is set in a world where we have people who are able to talk to the dead or read the dead, and those are Mortedants. And our main character is one of these Mortedants. These are people in this world that are useful. You know, if you have a relative pass away, maybe their dead body can tell you where they hid their money or some sort of a secret that will help you out in life. But people don't really have a lot of respect for them. They kind of fear them maybe a little bit in their connection to their dead. And this is a society with a lot of different class levels, different politics, and different species, I guess you would say, different cultures, but it's more than just a cultural difference because different peoples have different abilities. So I would classify them more like fairies versus humans in that they are different, and then, two different Canadians versus Americans type of a difference. And there are a lot of different levels of society. People from the lower levels, the outer sections of the city, maybe it would be, are looked down upon. They are the poor, they are mistreated, and the people, the elite, are more so in the center. Our main character here is part of this class of Mortedants, which gives them some semblance of respect, maybe, but they're really not at the top in terms of how other people within this group view them. He doesn't get very many jobs, which means he's scrambling for resources and money to survive. And the assistant he winds up taking on is someone from these lower classes, someone who's deemed not really even worthy, but he's willing to work with them. Unfortunately, his assistant is murdered. The problem is, in this society, if you're the one to find a body and you can't show that someone else did it, you're just assumed to have done it yourself. And he stumbles on this body. The body is in his home, and therefore he is set for execution, and he needs to find who actually killed his young assistant. He feels bad about this death. They weren't really friends, but he was under his employ, and therefore he does have extra motivation to do it. But the fact that he will be executed if he can't find out who killed this boy is his primary objective. He is assigned a bodyguard who is someone from one of these other species, I'm going to call them races, I guess, but in a way where this person does have some magical healing abilities and fighting abilities, and there's definitely a cultural divide between them. Our main character doesn't understand this person's use of armor and the privacy of that, and this person is dedicated to keeping our main character alive even though they don't really get along in the beginning. We also meet another young person from the outer realms of society who gets brought into the mix, and we're building a little bit of a found family over time, and I'm really enjoying seeing how that comes together, how these characters aren't getting along in the beginning but begin to make connections, begin to see past each other's prejudices about things, and that it goes both ways. It's not just our main character looking down on other people because they're not part of his elite group, but they also have prejudices against him. And I think I'm really enjoying kind of learning more about the magic of this world. I do want to know more about how our main character talks to the dead, because he talks about how some of the things he does are outside of the norm, and he's very secretive about some of the ways he does what he does. And I would like to hear a little bit more about why he's doing these things and why other people don't do them, and I'm hoping maybe we'll get there. But this is largely following the murder mystery kind of aspect of this, but that is giving us a lot of really good glimpses of the society, of the different levels, of the political structure of his group of Mortedants. That's just hard for me to say, so it's probably coming out weird, but I am enjoying my time with this, so I'm going to continue on with this. I'm taking it in the car with me on audio. It's not a big multitasking book, just from the standpoint that I do want to be following the details that he's discovering about the mystery, but it worked quite well while I was working with my yarn last night, and it's definitely one I can read in the car today on my way to and from work. So that's the plan. I'm going to keep going, and I'll provide you with an update later. Hello again. I am currently doing some reading sprints for Escape the Readathon. In present day, it is the tail end of May, going into the final weekend of Escape the Readathon, and because I've been modding for the Discord for the Readathon for Lexie, she allowed me to do some sprints this evening, so I've been having fun doing that. We're on a final sprint. It's getting later, but as I'm doing that, I've been working on a lot of other things, but I do have several book updates for you. First of which being that I did finish up Mortedant's Peril, and I had a really good time with this one. I know I have a special edition of this coming in one of my book boxes, so that always gives a little bit of extra worry about whether I'm going to like something or not, or regret the fact that I spent money on a special edition for it. And this one I am happy to be getting it, because I think it was a really interesting, unique world, and I liked the characters. It was nice to be in a fantasy world where it's about the world and the characters and the mystery, not a romance. And it's not that I have anything against a romance in a fantasy, it's just nice change of pace, I guess, to be in a book where that isn't going to be a main focus of the story. I did enjoy the found family aspects of this. There is some humor to it. There is some darkness to it. I mean, we're dealing in death in here, so obviously there are some dark moments. There is a sense of urgency in the fact that there is a deadline for when our main character is meant to be executed, and that is looming over it, and you do get reminders of that in the text periodically. I don't know if it's in headers. I'm trying to think. Yeah, in the headers, it'll have like Chapter 20, Fire Day, 2 days to execution. So there is that kind of pressure on our characters, on the story to keep going. I am landing at a 4-star for this one. It's not necessarily the strongest 4-star for me, but I had a good time. I'm intrigued about what this will do in the future because I believe it is the start of a new trilogy. This does feel like a really finished story in some ways, although there's certainly threads to investigate more. There are still some things about what our main character does in terms of reading the dead that I would like get into more depth on, and I definitely would be picking up a sequel for this one. So this was a good one, and there's more. While I was at work today and getting stuff done, I wanted to pick up something new to read, and so I read another book, and that is Dinner with an Astronaut by Leroy Chiao. It is a memoir. It is a book that I picked up also on audio from Harlequin Audio. This is a gifted copy I received from Hanover Square Press, and I just received the hard copy in the mail. It is coming out, I believe, on June 9th, if I'm not mistaken, or June 2nd, June 9th, early June, let's put it that way. And it is a really quick read. This is by Leroy Chiao, who was one of the first Asian American astronauts to go into space, and it is his memoir about his involvement in the space program and his origin story of his interest in it, and also some about just the history of space itself. A lot of the book is written in the form of having a question and his answer to that question. Things like, what was it like to fly with the Russians for a time when our space program didn't have a way to get up into space, and they had to team up with the Russians. And the book itself is split up into courses, like we have here part 3, main course, the meat and potatoes of an astronaut's life. And it goes into things about like eating in space and meals in space and food resources in space. But I thought it was a fun way to kind of do the gimmick of the book, to focus and organize the book in that way, because the life of an astronaut is such that you would imagine he does get a lot of questions from people. If he goes out to dinner with people, he's going to be getting a lot of questions and talking about his experiences. And it was just a really interesting read. It was a solid 4-star. It's a really quick audiobook. I want to say it's like a 6-hour audiobook. It's not a super long book. As you can see, the print copy, you've got a lot of photos in here as well. And I enjoyed getting the chance to kind of look through that and hear about his training and his life, and looking back at his life, his family, and how they felt about his journey and everything else. So this was a good time. Definitely one, if you're interested in interesting, unique memoirs, I think this one definitely suits. And then there is actually even one more. I am now halfway into Beach Thriller by Jamie Day. This is a gifted copy that I received from St. Martin's Press and Macmillan Audio. In the story, we're following Holly, and she is a young writer, a struggling writer, you might say. She has had to leave New York. She's gone back to an old family home that she hasn't seen in 20 years in a seaside cottage in Massachusetts. There's a reason she hasn't been back in so long, and that's because her sister died when they were there, and she has a lot of guilt surrounding this. I think she's kind of lacking answers as to exactly what happened, but she puts a lot of the blame on herself for some reason, and we are slowly uncovering more about that as we go along. While she's there and trying to find her place and settling in, she kind of comes up with the idea of putting pen to paper and trying to process the past by telling the story of it. And again, she doesn't have all of the information, but she's trying to flesh out the story, figure everything out, and write it. There is someone, though, who doesn't want her to tell the story, and that person is this watcher person, and we are also getting his POV. And he is a very sinister voice in the audiobook and in the book itself, I would say, and there's something about this story that the watcher doesn't want told. And the synopsis itself says that. It's not really anything spoilery. It says, the watcher sees all and knows what Holly doesn't. Some secrets must remain buried. We are also getting a third POV in here. We are following someone named Jade, who is a runaway, who is taking on a job and working for a a wealthy family, an older woman who's very difficult to work with, and she takes this job on. We know she has a history of being a thief. We know there's some dark past with her. We're not sure really how she fits in with the rest of the story. And altogether, I'm really intrigued to see how all of these threads are going to wind up coming together, what answers we're going to get about Holly's sister, and how ultimately this is going to play out. I'm not 100% hooked in or connecting with any of these characters exactly, but ultimately I am intrigued to keep going. So at the halfway point, I think we're getting a lot of setup so far and so forth, and I think going forward it's going to get a little bit more involved and exciting. So that is my hope for this one. So that was a lot of updates. I'm going to go ahead and get back to getting a couple things done before the sprint ends, and then I will check in with you guys later once I finish Beach Thriller. I'm back with final thoughts on Beach Thriller, and I had a good time with this one. I think it did take me a while, as I probably said at the midway point, to get into the story and to figure out the beats of who was who and what timeline related to what timeline in what way. And some of that might have just been doing the audio without the print in front of me. I'm thinking maybe the time jumps and the switches in POV would have been slightly more clear in a print copy. I'm not sure about that since obviously I don't have the print copy in this particular case, but I think the author did a really good job of laying out details throughout the story, keeping things vague intentionally in a way that wasn't too frustrating. It's spelled out over time, and you get reveals and you get closer and closer to the truth of what happened in the past, what's happening in the present day, can you trust, who can you not trust. And there's a lot of moving parts in here, a lot of things where characters are making assumptions because they don't have the answers, just like the reader doesn't have the answers. And I do tend to not jump to the same conclusions as the characters in this case. I did make a couple of predictions which wound up vaguely right, but also at the same time being wrong. I kind of guessed a few things, but assigned the motives to the wrong characters or put together the timelines in just slightly an off-center kind of a way. So I really like that about it, that I came close in some ways and also was wrong in some ways and was surprised by some things along the way. I overall really enjoyed this one. I think I'm landing at a 3.5 to a 4 for this one. And it's one that I think if you've read others from this author and enjoy kind of a twisty turny story and a dual timeline type of story, I think this one could work for you as well. Okay, I have another arc to talk to you about. This is Behind Closed Doors by Catherine Adel West. This is a June 9th release, and I have a gifted audiobook copy from Harlequin Audio. This is an author I've read from before, and I did enjoy, so of course I had to request her newer book. This is a thriller, and we're following two different POVs. Giovanni is the first Black head concierge at a elite hotel where she works, and she's worked really hard to get to this position. She winds up meeting up with an ex-friend or a friend who had drifted away for a while, and they are trying to reunite. This other friend is an influencer, and things don't go according to plan. They wind up getting into a very heated argument. It's very public in the kind of lobby or dining or something area of this hotel. Whatever it is, making it very public. And the next day, Giovanni doesn't really remember how the evening ended, how she got home. She's got some bruises on her. Things are a little bit weird. And then she gets a call that she needs to get to the hotel ASAP, and her friend has gone missing. Natalie hasn't been seen since the night before, and assumptions are something really catastrophic has happened to her because there's a bloody room, and people are of course talking about the fact that she and our POV character Giovanni had this blow up, and it doesn't look good for her. Everyone's kind of assuming that she is the guilty party and things went really, really badly. There is one person on Giovanni's side, and that is a detective. Redding is looking into a series of disappearances, all Black women, and she thinks there's something more significant happening here, and that Natalie's disappearance is one of many. And that doesn't match up with Giovanni being the responsible party. So they are both kind of looking into what happened. Giovanni's trying to remember what happened the evening before, try to piece things together, how she got home. Maybe that'll give clues as to what's going on. The detective is looking into what happened to Natalie and also how that might relate to these other disappearances. This one I would say so far is interesting to me. It's not 100% holding my attention fully. When I put the book down, it doesn't call me back to it, but I'm enjoying it enough that I am still wanting answers. I'm wanting to see what happens. I'm wanting to find out what the bigger picture is here with these disappearances, and I'm liking our main characters and hoping that that we do get to prove that Giovanni is not responsible for anything going too terribly bad. So that's where we're at with things. I don't have a lot of thoughts at this midway point. It is quick chapters, which I really like. It is keeping the tension up and giving reveals as we go along, and I am enjoying that aspect of it, and I'm hoping that I'll be more fully hooked in the second half of the book. I have now finished up Strangers Behind Closed Doors, and I had a good time with this one overall. It is a little bit of a slower pace in some ways, even though the text moves pretty quickly and the short chapters move pretty quickly. It is one that takes its time, and I think there's more here that is also delivering some messages about how women in society are disregarded, can go missing, and nobody raises a finger, especially young Black women who get taken advantage of, who go missing, and it doesn't become a noticeable pattern because not enough people are raising their voices and speaking up. Still, even with that, I do think the author did a really good job of blending it so it didn't feel too heavy on messaging and lose track of the plot along the way. I think this had some twists and turns that I did not expect, that I did not see coming, which I really enjoyed. And toward the end, I definitely got more hooked in. It took me a while to get to that point, possibly just because I had other distractions and other priorities going on. This did take me a little bit to get through for that reason. I had to put it down a couple times and switch to something else. And there just was something about this that didn't immediately call me to pick it back up. But when I did, I was enjoying it. We get a lot of really satisfying answers in the end. We get a lot of people being put in their place. We see a friendship forming between our main characters. And there's definitely a lot of empowerment in the idea of female friendships in here, which I really enjoy seeing in a story as well. The book does end on a note that seems like it could be setting up for a continuation. I haven't seen anything saying that's going to be the case, but it did leave me kind of wondering at the end. Overall, this is a 4-star, maybe a 3.5 to a 4, but still a really good read and one that I am glad that I picked up. Jumping into a July 7th arc, I am now a bit past the halfway point in Fabulous Bodies by Chuck Tingle. And this is one I've been very excited to get to after really loving, especially Bury Your Gaze, but in general, the horror that Chuck Tingle brings us. This one is a bit fun as well because it's set in Palm Springs, which is a destination I will be going to at the end of June. So I kind of remembered that was the case. And then when it came up in the book, it prompted me to remember that I knew that was the case. In this book, we're following Poppy, and she is a single mom. She is not exactly living life on the up and up. She is partially a lifestyle influencer and trying to make a name for herself doing that, but also she moonlights as someone who steals dead bodies and procures them for people who are going to use them for things that they probably shouldn't. And things like target practice or medical experiments that aren't on the up and up, things like that. And that's really how she makes her main money. Poppy is reeling a bit from the fact that she has just learned that one of her absolute favorite artists, a queer icon musician named Eddie, has been killed by a drunk driver. It's been recorded for all the world to see. It's very obviously the man died. And that really throws her for a loop for a little bit. It also gives her maybe some opportunity to create some content about her sadness and maybe get some attention that way. What she doesn't expect is to get a phone call. And this phone call comes in on her personal cell phone. She doesn't know how this person got her number, but they offer her a very, very lucrative job to go pick up a dead body. And it seems too easy. It probably was too easy. Like, she just has to walk in. She doesn't even have to deal with anyone. She can just take the body. Thing is, things go awry after that. And this is where we start getting into the horror aspect of it, because Eddie is the body she's picking up, and Eddie wakes up. And there's very weird things going on around him. He has a lot of power over her, and he has a lot of very, very violent tendencies. So we are watching Poppy try to figure out how to survive this night, how to get back to her daughter, and that is the story. The book so far is very entertaining. It's very gory. It definitely has a lot of body horror going on, so you should know that going into this one. I was not sure how I felt about Poppy at the beginning. The whole influencer thing, and we see her do things like ignore her daughter's cries for attention. Mind you, her daughter's like preteen, elementary school age. I don't know exactly how old. So we're not talking about abandoning a baby in a crib, but still, her daughter's trying to get her attention, and she's spending time making some content before she goes to answer her daughter. And maybe her priorities are a little bit skewed. I think by the end of the book, she will have learned some lessons or learned priorities a little bit better. That's my guess. The body hunting aspect of this and how she gets gets in to take advantage of these, not morgues so much as funeral homes, places where dead bodies are with less regulations, and how she uses her own attractiveness and so forth was an interesting setup to the start of the book. It's a really quick read. I don't know how long the audiobook is, but I believe the print book is only like 260 pages, so it makes sense that I flew past the halfway point before I really even realized it. But I am getting tired this evening, so I think this is going to be when I finish up in the morning, hopefully. I am currently reading this for a reading prompt for the Amazing Readathon because I needed a author who uses a pseudonym, and since Chuck Tingle is someone who keeps his IRL identity very secret, I thought this was an appropriate pick for that. So I'm going to keep going on it, and we'll get back to you once I have final thoughts. I have finished up Fabulous Bodies, and I had a fabulous time with it. I don't think it's going to be my new favorite Chuck Tingle, but I did really, really enjoy it. It was a good time. It had some good horrifying moments. It had some consequences. If you hear it chomping in the background, Kylie's keeping herself company, chewing on a bone. So why she needed to do that the second I turned on the camera, that is, up to interpretation. But in any case, the book. I did really enjoy getting to kind of explore some different areas of Palm Springs, given that I'm going to be in Palm Springs in a matter of a couple weeks. And the progression that the story took, the way that our main character is interacting with this former idol of her, lesson learned, never meet your idols, and the way that kind of supernatural horror comes more and more into the story the further you get in. I really enjoyed the buildup of that and the pace that it goes at as well. I do think that I wound up liking our main character a lot more toward the end. I was struggling with her a bit in the beginning, but she grew on me definitely, and I appreciated seeing her character growth and the fact that she does make some really smart conclusions, some smart ideas on how to deal with what she's doing and fight for the ability to come back and make it back to her daughter, appreciate her daughter even more probably. And ultimately, this was a very strong 4-star, possibly verging on a 4.5 really, the more I'm thinking about it, because I meant to film this yesterday and I did not. So I've had a little more time to think about it, but overall it was a really good time and I am really glad that I picked it up. For my next arc, I have a gifted copy of Grey After Dark by Noelle W. Ihli. This is a copy I received from Kensington Books, and it appears to be a re-release. There is a new deluxe edition with sprayed edges coming out on June 30th from Kensington. It has previously been published under different publisher names. We are primarily following Miley, and she is a former or potentially still current Olympian in the biathlon. It is a sport that involves both skiing and target shooting, and she had been really good at what she was doing. She works with a partner on the same team, but things have gone off the rails for her. She was in a really bad accident. She has some lingering pain from that. She lost her mother in that accident, and both the trauma and the injury definitely impacted her. She unfortunately does not perform as well as expected or hoped in the last Olympics she went to, so she's taking a beat. She's taking the time to take a summer job at a summer camp type place. On top of that, she's dealing with the fact that her partner in this sport, he let her know right before she left that he wants a romantic relationship with her, is in love with her, and she didn't know how to deal with that. So she goes into this job not really knowing a whole lot. The person in charge of the camp doesn't really appreciate her and her lack of knowledge and her casual attitude towards things. But she's there to work, but also still keep up her training. She keeps going out jogging on the trails, even though people have warned her that it's not really safe to go out on her own. There's bears. There's a story of a missing woman some years back presumed taken by a bear. One of these days she goes out running. She does not come back. And the people at the camp originally think maybe she flaked. By the next day, they start to get worried. They call her partner in, who's her emergency contact. He comes out. We are reading from his POV as well. But we know what has happened to her. At the beginning of the book, we already know she's being held in captivity. This is how the book opens, and then we flash back. So we know this from the very beginning. That's not spoilery, but we get to see her run into the person or people who are taking her, what their motivations are, the trauma she's going through. It is a very dark story. It is a bit gory, kind of. Not super gory, but there's definitely abuse happening. There's definitely trauma to her body and her psyche and everything else going on. And I flew through the first 60% or so of this because I didn't realize I had passed the halfway point and didn't put it on pause quite quickly enough. But I am liking the pacing of it. I am liking the fact that we are getting to know her really well, the traumas she's been through in the past and how that informs how she's handling things in the present. The best friend / potential romantic interest in his quest to find her and save her, that he's not willing to accept that she's just disappeared because of a bear attack, and he is determined to find her, though I do hope she does find a way to save herself more so than him coming in. So we'll see how that goes. But I am really interested to see how this goes. It's a very quick read. It's not that long either, so that helps as well. So I've got dinner in the oven. I've got Kylie. You're probably hearing her chewing on her bone. And I think we're just going to relax and keep reading this evening and go from there. Okay, a couple of updates for you. And first off, I did finish Grey After Dark, and overall, I was entertained by this. I enjoyed this one. It wasn't a huge win, I wouldn't say. I wouldn't say it did anything that unique compared to other stories, but I really enjoyed that it took its time, that there wasn't an instant win to it. Our character who's out searching for her is having to make sacrifices, is having to survive in nature himself and keep looking and keep hope alive when everyone else has given up. And then our main character, Miley, she is really going through it. She's using her brain. She's trying to make things work so she can find an avenue for escape. But this does go dark directions. It goes further than I thought. So slight spoiler warning, I guess, but definitely trigger warning in here. If sexual assault is something that would be potentially really, really triggering, I would use caution here because that does come into the situation a couple of times. It's never graphic on page. It's never there, I don't think, for the shock value of it. It makes sense in this horrific situation they're in, but just putting it out there that that is something to keep in mind. Ultimately, I did like how this wound up. It did tie up into an awfully neat, perfect bow a little bit more than maybe I would have liked. I would have maybe liked seeing some of the recovery process more than we did, but ultimately this is a 3.5. I'm glad that I picked it up. It was a quick read. It was a very dark read, but it kept me fully engaged. And then I did start my last arc. I have many more to get to, but I need to cut myself off somewhere. But this is a quick one. It's going to help me out for the Amazing Readathon this month, so I figured I would hurry up and get this in because I am running late on it. It is a Spotify audiobook, which is the first time I picked up a book from Spotify as an ARC, but this is Close Friends Only by Kate Alice Marshall, an author that I've really enjoyed in the past. This one came out on June 16th. I'm not going to say too much about this one because it is only like a 5-hour audiobook, so I don't want to give too much away in the midway thoughts, but this one follows a group of friends. They had a really disastrous girls' trip that wound up with a cover-up, and mind you, the tagline at the top of the blurb says, "A good friend will help you move, a best friend will help me move a body," and the opening of the book adds on the line, "and nobody tells you that it will really make future girls' trips awkward," something along those lines. So you can imagine what may have happened on their past trip. We are following Mandy. She is one of the girls from this trip. She has spent the last year really trying to forget about it, to erase it, etc. She's been a little bit distant from the rest of her friends as a result. The rest of the friends who are here, they are all part of this influencer package, styling the image online of an influencer and the entire deal around that. They do gather again this year. This is the home, the private island home of one of their friends, and they are bound and determined to make it another girls' weekend. But there is a storm outside, which keeps them extra isolated. There are complications to things at the house at the very beginning. The synopsis says someone's going to be gravely injured and the trip is going to turn perilous. I have been listening to this one. It's really quick going. Like I said, it's only a 5-hour audio, 4.5-hour audio, something like that. So there is a lot to it, and still I'm finding myself really entertained. So I'm hopeful that I will finish this up and finish this vlog up today. So that's all I'm going to give you at this point for this one. Having fun with it. That's really my only thought. And I'll be back later. I'm back with my final update for this particular archetype vlog because I have finished Close Friends Only, and I enjoyed myself with this one. It was a very quick read, as a 5-hour audiobook generally is, but I think the author did well at fleshing things out enough in a novella format and also getting to some messages about the dangers of technology and the ways people can misuse that, the ways people can kind of turn on each other in certain ways. This is a friend friendship story, but more of a toxic friendship story than anything else. I had some mixed feelings about our main character in here. She is someone who has made mistakes, who has been put in situations where she made the wrong decision, I think. But I wound up rooting for her because ultimately she tried to be a good friend to people, and that was kind of her reason for some of the things she does. And yes, she made mistakes, but she's trying to correct things and trying to keep things from going completely off the rails again. So I definitely could pull for her in here. I do think things wound up a little neat for her in the end, ultimately, and I'm not sure entirely how I feel about that, but I do like the way this whole mystery, the whole reveals of what was really going on behind the scenes came out, and I enjoyed the story. I'm giving this one a solid 4 stars, which ends us off on a really nice note. Let me know in the comments below, have you read any of these books? Are any of them on your radar to pick up? Or let me know if you have any upcoming releases you're super excited for. Let me know all the things in the comments below, and if you made it this far and you don't have anything to comment but would like to let me know you were here, how about leaving me some sort of emoji related to social media? That's random, but I think it fits quite well for close friends only. If you could hit that like button below, I would surely appreciate it, and subscribe if you're interested in more of my arc attacks, more of my book reviews, and more of my bookish content in general. But for now, I'll leave you here and see you real soon in a new video.